My family told me I wasn't welcome at my grandmother's funeral. They didn't say it over the phone. They didn't send me a message. They sent my cousin to my apartment the night before the funeral to tell me in person. He stood outside my door for almost a minute before speaking. Grandma didn't want you there. I stared at him. What? He looked uncomfortable. Mom says you shouldn't come tomorrow? I almost laughed because it sounded so absurd. My grandmother died 3 days ago. I know. And you're telling me I can't attend her funeral? He looked down. That's what they said. I opened the door wider. Who said it? He hesitated. My mother. Your mother? Aunt Linda. And my grandmother. He didn't answer. That was the answer. I stepped back. Did Grandma say that before she died? He looked at me. No. Then why are you telling me not to go? He rubbed the back of his neck. Because everyone thinks it's better this way. I stared at him. Better for who? He didn't know what to say. So I closed the door. I didn't sleep that night, not because I was angry, because I kept thinking about the last thing my grandmother had said to me. It had been 11 days before she died. I was sitting beside her hospital bed. She was weak. Her voice was barely above a whisper. She squeezed my hand and said, "Whatever they tell you after I'm gone, don't let them make you believe I stopped loving you." At the time, I thought she was talking about death. I didn't realize she was talking about them. My mother, my aunts, my cousins, the entire family. And most importantly, I didn't know that my grandmother had left one final letter. A letter her lawyer would read to everyone at the funeral. A letter that would explain why my family wanted me nowhere near the church. And why, in the end, they were terrified I would show up. My name is Emily. I'm 36 years old. My grandmother's name was Margaret. Everyone called her Maggie. She raised me from the age of 8 until I left for college. That's the part my family liked to forget. They preferred the story that Grandma had simply been close to me. She wasn't. She was my home. My parents divorced when I was 7. My father moved to another state. My mother worked 2 jobs and struggled with alcohol. There were nights when she didn't come home. There were mornings when I went to school without breakfast. Then, one winter evening, my grandmother arrived at our apartment. She took one look at me and asked my mother, "Where is she sleeping?" My mother said, "What? Where is Emily sleeping?" In her room. Grandma walked down the hallway. There was no bed, just a mattress on the floor. That night, Grandma packed a suitcase. She took me home. She told my mother she wasn't taking me away forever. Just until things stabilized. Things never stabilized. I stayed with Grandma. For 10 years. She made breakfast every morning. She packed my lunch. She sat beside me while I did homework. She came to parent-teacher meetings. She learned the names of every teacher I ever had. She attended every school play, every graduation, every birthday. She was there, always. My mother visited sometimes. So did my aunts. But nobody ever questioned who had actually raised me. Until I turned 22. That's when Grandma sold her small bakery. She had owned it for 31 years. It wasn't a big business. 3 employees. 1 storefront, a kitchen in the back. But it was profitable, and it belonged to her. She told me she was selling because she was tired. I believed her. Years later, I learned the real reason. She had sold it to help pay for my college. She never told me. When I graduated, I asked how she had afforded tuition. She said, "Your grandmother has a few tricks." That was Grandma. She never wanted gratitude. She wanted results. When I got my first job, she framed my employment letter. When I got promoted, she baked a cake. When I got my first apartment, she brought me a houseplant. It died in 2 months. She blamed the plant. I blamed myself. She said, "Emily, some plants just don't like apartments." I knew she was lying. She just didn't want me to feel bad. That was the kind of person she was. She could make you feel loved without making you feel indebted. And that's why I couldn't understand what happened after she died. The family changed after Grandma became sick. It started slowly. My mother suddenly began visiting more often. My Aunt Linda started calling every few days. My Uncle Robert began asking questions about Grandma's finances. At first, I thought they were worried. Then I realized they were asking the same question in different ways. Do you know what Grandma plans to do with the house? Has she ever mentioned the savings? Did she update her will? Did she tell you anything about the business? I always gave the same answer. No, sometimes it was true, sometimes it wasn't, because Grandma had started telling me things, not about money, about the family. She told me my mother had borrowed money from her for years. She told me Aunt Linda had asked her for a loan after her divorce. She told me Uncle Robert had taken money from the bakery when he was younger. She never complained. She simply said, "People show you who they are when they need something." I asked her once, "Are you worried about them?" She smiled. "No." Then why tell me? Because you need to know the difference between forgiveness and trust. I didn't understand. Not then. 3 months before she died, Grandma changed her lawyer. His name was Thomas Reed. He was quiet, older, always wore dark suits. I met him once. He came to Grandma's house on a Tuesday afternoon. I was making coffee. He sat with Grandma for 2 hours. When he left, Grandma looked tired. I asked her what they had talked about. Business. What business? My business. I laughed. She smiled. Then she said, Emily, if something happens to me, Thomas will know what to do. I stopped laughing. Grandma, I'm old. You're 78. Exactly. That's not old. She smiled. You're terrible at comforting people. I learned from you. She laughed. Then she became serious. Promise me something. What? Don't fight with your mother after I'm gone. I frowned. Why was away? Because she may say things. Like what? Things she wishes were true. That sentence stayed with me. I didn't know what it meant. I would soon find out. The night before the funeral, my cousin Daniel stood outside my apartment and told me not to attend. He was the only person in my family who looked ashamed. I asked him, did Grandma tell anyone she didn't want me there? No. Then why? He looked at me. Your mother thinks you caused problems. What problems? She says you manipulated Grandma. I laughed. Into what? He didn't answer. Into changing the will. He looked away. That told me everything. I closed my eyes. So that's what this is about. He nodded. I don't know what's in the will. Neither do I. They think you do. I don't. He sighed. Emily, just don't come tomorrow. I looked at him. Why? Because they don't want a scene. I said. The only people creating a scene are the people trying to stop me from going to my grandmother's funeral. He didn't respond. I closed the door. Then I sat on the floor. And for the first time since Grandma died, I cried. Not because they were keeping me from the funeral. Because they had turned her death into a competition. The next morning, I went anyway. I wore the black dress Grandma had bought me 2 years earlier. She had said, every woman needs one good black dress. I had laughed. She had said, trust me. I drove to the church. The parking lot was full. Cars lined both sides of the street. I parked 2 blocks away. Then I walked. I could see my family through the church doors. My mother was standing beside the entrance. When she saw me, she froze. Then she walked toward me. Emily. Mom, you shouldn't be here. I'm here for Grandma. She wouldn't want this. I looked at her. Wouldn't want this. I looked at her. Wouldn't want what? She didn't answer. Then Aunt Linda appeared. Emily, please. I said, please what? Don't make today about you. I almost laughed. I didn't. You know exactly what you're doing. No. Exactly what you're doing. No. I looked between them. I'm here to say goodbye to the woman who raised me. My mother crossed her arms. You always make everything difficult. There it was, the sentence from my childhood. I looked at her. I learned from Grandma. Her face hardened. You don't deserve to be here. I didn't respond. A man behind her stepped forward. Thomas Reed. Grandma's lawyer. He looked at me. Then he looked at my mother. Then he said, actually, Emily absolutely deserves to be here. Everyone went silent. My mother stared at him. What are you doing? Thomas said, I've been looking for her. I've been standing here. I know. He smiled. That's why I'm relieved. Then he turned toward the church. Because there are several things your grandmother wanted everyone to hear. The funeral began 20 minutes later. I sat in the back. My family sat in the front. Nobody spoke to me. I didn't care. I listened. The priest talked about Grandma's kindness, her generosity, her stubbornness, her love of baking. Then he asked if anyone wanted to speak. My mother stood. She walked to the podium. She cried. She talked about how difficult it had been to lose her mother. She talked about family. She talked about forgiveness. Then she said, Mom always wanted us to stay together. I stared at her. That was not what Grandma had told me. My mother continued. She never wanted division. Aunt Linda cried. Uncle Robert lowered his head. Then my mother said, unfortunately, some people don't understand what family means. I knew exactly who she meant. I looked down. I didn't react. Then my mother finished. Everyone applauded softly. Thomas Reed did not. He remained seated. After the service, everyone gathered in the church hall. I stayed near the back. Thomas approached me. Your grandmother left instructions. I looked at him. What kind? He handed me an envelope. My name was written on it in Grandma's handwriting. I couldn't breathe. What's inside? You'll know when everyone is together. I looked around. Everyone? Yes. When? Now. Thomas walked to the front of the hall. People gradually became quiet. My mother looked nervous. Aunt Linda whispered something to Uncle Robert. Thomas raised a hand. I have been asked by Margaret Bennet to read a letter. My mother's face went pale. What letter? Thomas ignored her. He opened the envelope. Dear family. His voice was steady. If you're hearing this, then I'm no longer there to stop you from arguing. A few people laughed nervously. Thomas continued. I know my death will bring questions. It will bring disagreements. And unfortunately, it may bring out some truths that people would rather keep buried. Nobody laughed anymore. My mother stood. Thomas, this is unnecessary. He looked at her. Your mother specifically instructed me to read this letter in front of everyone. My mother sat down. Thomas continued. First, I want Emily to know something. He looked directly at me. You were never a burden. My throat tightened. Not when you were 8, not when you were 16, not when you came home from college, and not during the last 3 years when you helped me through every difficult day. My mother looked at me. Thomas kept reading. Some people may tell you that you took too much of my time, that you influenced my decisions, that you manipulated me. That is not true. I heard Aunt Linda whisper, oh my God. Thomas continued. Emily never asked me for money. She never asked me to change my will. She never asked me for the house. She never asked me for anything. My mother closed her eyes. Thomas paused. Then he read the next line. But my daughter did. The room became completely silent. My mother looked up. Thomas continued. Over the last 2 years, my daughter Linda and my son Robert asked me repeatedly to sell the house and divide the proceeds. Aunt Linda stood. That's not. Thomas raised his hand. Please let me finish. She sat down. My daughter Elaine asked me to forgive several debts. My mother started crying. I did forgive them. Thomas looked at her. But I did not forget them. Nobody moved. Then he reached the part that changed everything. Now I want to explain why Emily is receiving something that may surprise you. My heart stopped. I looked at him. Thomas turned the page. My house is not being left to Emily. Aunt Linda looked relieved. My mother exhaled. Thomas continued. It is being placed into a trust. He paused. The trust will be managed for the next 15 years. During that period, Emily will have full residential rights, and no family member may sell, mortgage, transfer, or otherwise encumber the property without her written consent. My mother stood. What? Thomas kept reading. After 15 years, ownership will transfer according to the conditions outlined in the attached trust. My mother looked furious. Why would she get control? Thomas answered. Because Margaret wanted Emily to have one thing the rest of you repeatedly tried to take from her. My mother stared at him. What? Thomas looked at me. Security. There was another letter. This one was shorter. Thomas said, your grandmother instructed me to read this part only after the first letter. He opened it. Emily. By now, they probably understand that this was never about the house. I closed my eyes. Of course she knew. This is about what happened when you were 8. I felt my stomach tighten. Your mother didn't tell you the whole story. My mother whispered, Mom. Thomas continued. She told you that she gave you to me because she couldn't care for you. That is only partly true. I looked at my mother. She was crying. Thomas read. The night I came to your apartment, I found you alone. Your mother had been gone for 19 hours. She had left you with no food. She had also taken money from my emergency account. My mother covered her face. I confronted her. She promised it would never happen again. It did. 3 weeks later, she disappeared for 4 days. I took you permanently. The room was silent. I looked at my mother. She couldn't look at me. Thomas continued. I never told Emily the whole truth because I didn't want a child to grow up believing her mother didn't love her. My mother's shoulders shook. But now Emily is an adult, and she deserves the truth. Thomas folded the paper slightly. Then he read the final paragraph. Elaine, I forgave you. My mother looked up, but forgiveness does not erase consequences. Emily was your daughter. You should have protected her. I did, and I always will. Thomas stopped. Nobody spoke. Then my mother stood. She walked toward me. For a second, I thought she might slap me. Instead, she fell into the chair beside me. I was sick, she whispered. I looked at her. I know. I didn't know how to be a mother. I know. I was ashamed. I know. I was ashamed. I know. She looked at me. How did you know? I said, Grandma told me. She cried harder. I didn't hug her, not immediately. Some wounds don't disappear because someone finally explains them. After everyone left, I stayed in the church hall. Thomas sat across from me. I asked him, "Why didn't Grandma tell me?" "Because she didn't want your childhood to become your identity." I looked at him. "What does that mean?" "She wanted you to build a life without spending it angry at your mother." I thought about that. Did she know my family would try to keep me from the funeral? Thomas smiled. She suspected. That's why she wrote the letter? Partly. What else? He reached into his briefcase. There was one final envelope. This one was sealed. For you. I took it. Now. I opened it. There was a single sheet of paper. Grandma's handwriting. "Emily, if you're reading this, you've probably learned things you didn't want to know. I'm sorry. But I need you to understand one thing. Your family may argue about what I left behind. Let them. Money makes people reveal themselves. Property makes people impatient. Inheritance makes people count. But love is not something that can be divided equally on paper. I didn't leave you more because I loved you more. I left you responsibility because you were the only one I trusted to carry it without turning it into a weapon. Don't punish your mother. Don't punish your aunts. Don't spend the next 15 years proving that you were right. Use what I left you to build something they cannot take away. A peaceful life. That is all I ever wanted for you. Love, Grandma." I read it twice. Then I folded it. Thomas watched me. "Are you okay?" I nodded. "Not yet." He smiled. "That's honest." The weeks after the funeral were difficult. My mother stopped calling. Aunt Linda sent angry messages. Uncle Robert demanded copies of the trust. I gave everything to Thomas. I refused to fight. The trust became a source of tension, but it also gave me something Grandma understood I needed. Time. I moved into her house, not because I wanted her property, because I wanted to understand her life. I opened every drawer, every cabinet, every old box. I found recipes, photographs, receipts, letters, birthday cards. And one afternoon, I found a notebook. It was tucked behind a row of cookbooks. The cover was blue. My name was written on it. I opened it. The first page said, "Things Emily doesn't know yet." I sat down. There were entries from 20 years earlier. Grandma had documented everything. My first school award, my first heartbreak, my first job. The day I got my college acceptance letter. The day I called her crying because I thought I wasn't good enough. The day I got my apartment. The day I brought her groceries during her chemotherapy. She had written everything, not because she was keeping score, because she was remembering. One entry was dated 6 months before her death. It said, "Emily thinks she stayed for me. Then, she doesn't understand that I stayed for her too." I closed the notebook and cried. 6 months later, my mother came to the house. She stood on the porch. I opened the door. Hi. She looked older, smaller. "I don't know if I should be here." I stepped aside. "Come in." She walked into the living room. She looked at Grandma's chair. Then she started crying. "I miss her." "I do too." She sat down. For a long time, neither of us spoke. Then she said, "I was jealous of you." I looked at her. "Why?" "Because Mom loved you without asking anything from you." I frowned. "She loved you. Not the same way. Different isn't less." She nodded. "I know that now." She looked around. "Do you hate me?" "No." "Do you forgive me?" I thought about Grandma's letter. "Not completely." She nodded. "I understand, but I'm trying." She smiled. "That's enough." A year after the funeral, Aunt Linda came to me with an offer. She wanted to buy her share of the family trust. I didn't understand. Thomas explained that Grandma had created several separate accounts, education funds, medical funds, charitable donations, and one investment account for each grandchild. Linda wanted early access. I refused. She became angry. "You think you're better than us?" "No, then why won't you help me?" "Because Grandma made the rules. You control the trust. I administer it." "Same thing." "No." I looked at her. That's exactly what Grandma was trying to prevent. She left. I never heard from her again. 15 years is a long time. Long enough for children to grow up. Long enough for people to change careers. Long enough for anger to become memory. But I remember the funeral as if it happened yesterday. I remember my cousin standing outside my door. I remember my mother saying I didn't deserve to be there. I remember sitting in the back of the church. I remember Thomas opening that first letter, and I remember the room becoming silent when Grandma said, "I did not leave Emily more because I loved her more." That sentence changed my life, because for years, I thought family was about fairness. Who got more? Who got less? Who was invited? Who was excluded? Who was loved? Who was chosen? Grandma taught me something different. Family isn't always about who receives the same thing. Sometimes it's about who needs something different. My mother needed forgiveness, my aunt needed boundaries, my cousin needed courage. And I needed permission to stop apologizing for being the child Grandma had chosen to protect. Today, the house is still mine to live in. The trust is still active. The garden is bigger. The kitchen has been renovated. Grandma's bakery recipes are framed on the wall. I even found the old plant she gave me when I moved into my first apartment. It wasn't dead. It was just incredibly difficult to keep alive. Exactly like Grandma. My mother visits every Sunday now. We don't pretend the past didn't happen. We talk about it. Sometimes it's uncomfortable. Sometimes we cry. But we talk. Aunt Linda eventually apologized. Uncle Robert never did. That's okay. I don't need everyone to understand what Grandma did. I understand, and that's enough. The most surprising part is that I never received a fortune. The house was protected. The trust gave me security. But the most valuable thing Grandma left me wasn't property. It was the truth. The truth about my childhood. The truth about my mother. The truth about why she trusted me. And the truth that she had loved me every single day she was alive. My family tried to keep me away from her funeral because they thought I would expose something. They were right, I did. But it wasn't their secrets. It was hers. A final message from a woman who knew that once she was gone, everyone would start fighting over what she left behind. So she left one last thing that couldn't be divided. Her voice. And when her lawyer read those words to everyone in that church hall, my family finally understood something I had spent my entire childhood learning. You can inherit a house. You can inherit money. You can inherit property. You can inherit a business, but you cannot inherit someone's place in another person's heart. My grandmother had already given me mine. She gave it to me when I was 8 years old. She gave it to me every morning when she packed my lunch, every night when she checked my homework, every time she showed up, every time she told me I was enough. And in the end, when my family tried to tell me I wasn't welcome at her funeral, she made sure her final words were waiting for me, not to punish them, not to make me win, but to remind me that I had never been unwanted. I had simply been loved by the one person who refused to let me believe otherwise. And sometimes, that's the greatest inheritance anyone can leave behind.